Rated T for Teen.
Each year, thousands of adults lose their shred. It's an epidemic simply known as shred loss. But it doesn't have to be this way, because rekindling your shred is as easy as playing the new Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4. With new parks, cross-platform multiplayer, and sick new game modes, we can put an end to shred loss everywhere. Get the new Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 and show the world that the shred's not dead. Pre-order Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 and play the Foundry demo.
This episode is brought to you by Dogfish Head Craft Brewery. The Grateful Dead and Dogfish Head have gotten the band back together with the release of Grateful Dead Juicy Pale Ale, a light-bodied pale ale brewed with sustainable kernza grains, granola, and heaps of good karma for a refreshing brew that's music to your taste buds. Available nationwide, visit dogfish.com to find Grateful Dead Juicy Pale Ale in your neck of the woods. Dogfish Head Craft Brewery is located in Milton, Delaware. Please drink responsibly.
Today's episode of Something About the Beatles was taped a month before the untimely passing of Jeff Beck, and it's being presented as taped.
Hello and welcome to episode 253 of Something About the Beatles, Something About the Yardbirds. And you might be wondering, what the hell is a Beatles podcast doing devoting an episode to the Yardbirds? Well, I will tell you. First of all, if you are a Yardbirds fan, then good for you. You're going to enjoy this conversation. I don't need to explain anything to you. If you're not a Yardbirds fan, then perhaps I will open your ears to the wonder that was their career. You might only know of them as just one more British invasion band that had a few hits in the 60s. They're sort of the quintessential British blues-based band that got taken up by American garage bands. Most notably, the greatest Yardbirds impersonation ever to score a hit record was the Count 5 Psychotic Reaction, a terrific 60s garage band hit. And I would say, if you talk to anybody I was ever in a band with, how I shoved the Yardbirds down their throats, every one of them, because we ended up doing a ton of Yardbirds stuff just because it's so damn good. It's fun to play, but it's deceptively sophisticated, and it takes you in all kinds of directions. I'll just leave it at that. For the purpose of this show, first of all, as big a fan as I am, I jumped on the opportunity to speak with Jim McCarty, and that's McCarty without an H. Now you're wondering, okay, he's the drummer of the band, so what? Well, he's way more than that. He was a backing vocalist, but also a co-writer, a songwriter in that band. Furthermore, went on to further collaborations after the Yardbirds with Keith Relf, the singer, and they went on to form Renaissance, that art rock band of the early 70s you might be aware of. They were around for the first couple of records, along with Keith's sister Jane, who was the female vocalist, before taking their leave, and the band went on and became quite successful for the remainder of the decade. But in any event, Jim McCarty is an all-round, I'm not even going to say it because it's too easy a pun, but very multi-talented guy. A book author as well. He wrote his memoir a few years ago with the great title Nobody Told Me, which should resonate with every Beatle fan, but also a book that was just published in the past year called She Walks in Beauty. To people interested in what happens beyond this level of existence, or who may have lost a loved one, I would recommend it. It's the story of his efforts to keep the communication going with his wife after she succumbed to cancer. So we talk a bit about that early in the conversation. But what I really want you to get from this show is to recognize the Yardbirds. They're mostly known for this handful of hits during the British invasion era: For Your Love, Evil Hearted You, Heart Full of Soul, I'm a Man, Over, Under, Sideways, Down. Also, they're the band that spawned the three greatest lead guitarists in British rock of the 60s, in order: Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page. And of course, Led Zeppelin emerged as the new Yardbirds as Jimmy sort of transitioned out of the Yardbirds into his next act when the other guys decided they'd taken it as far as they wanted to take it. So that's sort of the thumbnail history of the Yardbirds, but what I really want to draw your attention to, if you don't know, is that unlike their contemporaries, now Lennon frequently accused the Stones of imitating the Beatles, and one can make that case or not. It's all in the ear of the beholder. The Who were very singular. Once they got out of the maximum R&B scene, they were very much blueprinting art rock before they really knew what they were doing. And who else? The Kinks, pretty much the vehicle for Ray Davies and his singular talents as a songwriter. But the Yardbirds had a band dynamic that I think among those bands more closely was aligned with the Beatles in terms of every member contributing something. So in addition to the aforementioned lead guitarist and Jim McCarty, who was a songwriter within the band, and Keith Ralph, the frontman, blues harp player, songwriter, you had Chris Drea on rhythm guitar, and you had Paul Samuel Smith on bass. Paul was, in a way, sort of their musical architect, sort of leading the way in the studio to what they did. And he, in fact, went on to a successful career as a music producer. Most notably, those Cat Stevens records from the early 70s that we all know and love. He also worked at Renaissance and Jethro Tull and Carly Simon. And if you're aware of that Paul Simon song, ironically titled American Tune, I say ironically because it's based on a Bach melody, which would make it a German tune, but Paul Samuel Smith produced that, which I didn't know until fairly recently. Anyway, that band was bursting with talent, okay? And Chris Drea, when he left the band, went on to become a photographer and, in fact, shot the back of the first Led Zeppelin album. So there's that. Like the Beatles, they wanted to evolve their sound with every record and do something different. That they certainly did. Like the Beatles, as John was fond of saying, the Beatles were the first to use feedback on a record with I Feel Fine. And that was a deliberate affectation, if you will, that they never really did much with again. The Yardbirds developed that further when they were using feedback on their recordings and sort of turned it into an art, especially with Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck comes in on the heels of Clapton, and he's totally down with them going commercial. As we talk about in the show, he, playing his telly, distinguishes himself pretty early on. Not only is he a master of blues, but when they try to record a sitar for the follow-up single Heart Full of Soul, aren't getting good results. He starts playing a bit Eastern to get that effect on a regular six-string guitar. So they were developing their sound and just moving outside the box of pop singles pretty quickly. It all sort of culminated in the fall of '66 with the Happenings 10 Years Time single, which has Beck and Page in the same group at the same time before Beck is out of the group. But that experimentation continues into the next LP that they make called Little Games in 1967. Anyway, that's a whole different story. The other thing I want you to take away from this is not just how they had this great sort of group spirit, just like the Beatles, and that they were always trying to evolve their sound, just like the Beatles, but that it was very important that as a support system, what the Beatles had, you really get a sense of how unique that was when you hear from somebody that's a contemporary of theirs and knew what it was like to be working into industry the same time in the same place, and how having a good, trustworthy manager was huge and essential. Not everybody had that. Not every group with talent had that component, which would have made a difference, or a great empathetic producer who understood and could work as a facilitator for them. So the Beatles, it's like every good break they could have had, they got. And that's how they ended up as the Beatles. But there were plenty of other acts out there, just as bursting with talent, that for this break or that break, weren't able to take it as far. So I think in this conversation with Jim, if you connect the dots, you'll recognize how the Beatles were exceptional because not only did they have this innate talent and superb songwriting and great vocals that blended so well, every single aspect that could have gone their way did, and timing and luck and all that stuff too. So they're very exceptional in that way, and other bands that followed for various reasons didn't have the same breaks, although their music still lasts and sounds as amazing and as fresh as ever. So Jim, the author of 2 books, Nobody Told Me and She Walks in Beauty, which we talk about, and also this history of the Yardbirds. I am grateful to have him on the show because he is a living witness to that period and so full of insight and stories, and I absolutely recommend both of his books if you're interested in that period or if you are interested in this particular journey he went on after the loss of his wife. Anyway, great guy, great conversation. I know you will enjoy it. There's a million different ways to go with this conversation because the band you came to fame in America through, the Yardbirds, is one thing. Incredibly diverse band. So much more than just one more band in the British invasion. But that was one part of your career, and then Renaissance and Box of Frogs and Illusion. Yeah, you were the drummer in the Yardbirds, but you were also a songwriter, and you sang, and you played guitar, and you've made solo albums, and you've written books. So a million different ways to go with this. So
yes, thank you.
it's cheap wordplay to call you a Renaissance man, so I won't do that.
No, I like different types of music, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Which was evident even during the Yardbirds.
Yeah, and I like to create, so yeah, and have fun.
So I guess we can start with this wonderful memoir.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit what prompted that made you want to get your story down?
I lost my wife to cancer in the middle of 2020, and you know I was obviously very distressed. But my wife and I were always very, very close on that sort of spiritual level. So I thought, well, she can't be that far away, you know. Mm-hmm. So I really pursued trying to track her down and trying to communicate. And I did quite well. I was very enthusiastic and I studied mediumship, actually. Mm-hmm.
Didn't you go to China and some other...
Oh, yeah, originally, yes. Yeah. My wife and I traveled because we were involved in Buddhism for a bit. And we traveled to India. We went on various pilgrimages to temples and monasteries in India and China and Sikkim. And we had a great time together. And we were very tuned in. And various things prompted me to sort of follow this line. I wasn't quite sure, first of all. And then I finally got introduced to this woman called Suzanne Giesman, who was originally a very high-ranked Navy officer in the U.S. Navy. Mm-hmm. And she lost her stepdaughter, who was actually in combat, but she didn't lose her in combat. She was struck by lightning, and she decided to become a medium. Mm-hmm. And then she went from there, and then she was so good at it, she started teaching. And so I did some of her courses, and she showed you various techniques, various simple techniques, how to communicate, how to get in touch with your relatives, you know, across the veil, as she calls it. Mm-hmm. And I actually had quite a few good results, you know, because she would say, oh, well, you know, you really need evidence. So to know it's them, you really have to ask them to tell you something you don't know about somebody, or don't know what's happening, what's going to come up, you know, something that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And lots of things did happen that I picked up from her, including the death of Charlie Watts, because Charlie Watts came into my mind when I was communicating, and it was quite a few months before he died, and I didn't even know he was ill. Mm-hmm. So it was quite a surprise. And then he died a few months later, and I thought, wow, that's quite big, and a lot of other things like that. So
there's a story you tell about getting a message from your wife about turning on the football game.
Yes. Yeah, well, I get all sorts of messages. And one of them was, I was about to watch a football game and I was communicating to her as usual. And she said, oh, there's a message in this football game from me. And I thought, a message in a football game? Anyway, what could it be? So I turned it on, and it was Liverpool playing, and of course all the fans were singing "You'll Never Walk Alone."
Perfect.
And that was the message. Mm-hmm. So I had lots of things like that, and I wanted to express it. I wanted to express it because not many people, you know, really believe it or believe in it. And I wanted to stand up and say, well, this has happened for me, mm-hmm. and maybe it would help somebody else if they read the book.
Which is called She Walks in Beauty.
Yeah, it's called She Walks in Beauty. My quest for the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. And I sort of go back through my life. I did it with a guy called Dave Thompson, who actually wrote the other book with me, you know.
Nobody Told Me.
Nobody told me, yeah. And we really got on, and I was very surprised he wanted to do that sort of book because he's a real rock and roll writer.
Yes.
And he was very good, very into it, and very good. And we had a lot of fun doing it, and it was nice to do it, nice to express all that. And I went back right to when I was in the group and some of the things that we'd written, particularly Keith, Ralph and I, we'd written ideas and based on those sort of spiritual ideas.
Mm-hmm. There was a story I read you were relating, I think, in a conversation, because the obvious question as a fan people are going to ask you when they know that you're communicating with people who've passed is, what about Keith? And there was something that came up where it was your wife with a blonde fellow.
Well, that was right. That wasn't me communicating. I was actually talking to a medium.
Uh-huh.
I've had quite a few sessions with different mediums, and I was talking to a medium one time, and she said, oh, yes, there's a blonde guy here with long blonde hair. She said, have you got a brother in spirit? And I said, no, I haven't. I was an only child, but I know who you mean. And she said, oh, he's actually got his arms around your wife. Got his arm around your wife. He's they're very close. And it was really nice,
Sure.
So that was the only time I've got him. And I haven't pursued it. Lots of people say to me, oh, perhaps you should pursue that. And I've never done it, actually, but perhaps I should.
So what has the reaction been to this book so far? Have you gotten a lot of responses from people who've experienced what you have?
It's been mixed. It hasn't gone mad, but the people that have read it are very pleased about it and they enjoy it. The people that have got it really, really like it. But I think it's a bit off the wall, for people. That they usually get the other book, Nobody Told Me, because it's more grounded and it's about the group and all that. So that book sells, probably twice as many as the other one. But I'm pleased that people do buy it.
Mm-hmm. Well, after this conversation, I'm sure there's, in our listenership, plenty of people that are going to be interested in checking out both your story in rock and roll as well as this afterlife pursuit.
Well, yeah, I hope so. They're both really good books, I think. Thanks to Dave, they're really nicely written. He's a great writer, and he seems to put you in that time period, you really feel like you're there. Have you read them yourself?
Yeah, I have read from the first book. I haven't got the second one yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's very vivid.
Yeah.
But not in a way that comes off as fictitious. It's a way that's got an immediacy to it that, as you describe, puts you in the moment. And there's any number of vivid vignettes you describe. For our purposes, I gravitated toward the Beatle-connected ones, but also the first time you walked into a club and saw the Rolling Stones, things like that.
Yeah. Well, it's all actually what happened. That's the thing. You forget what you've done in your life. See the Stones, and you've never seen anything like it before, and they have a different drummer. And, wow, you never heard that sort of music, really. Mm-hmm. It was something very special. I got to wear the to the left of me. I got to wear the to the right of me. I got to wear this all around me. But I ain't got you. Yeah.
So, to go back to your own musicality, I've read in different things, including that book, how you got interested in the drums through a cadet band, and that engaged you at an early age.
I was actually in it was called the Boys Brigade. Mm-hmm. I played the military drum, really, snare drum. Mm-hmm. Now and then we'd go marching down the street, with bugles and drums, and I was very good at it. I used to play all the solos on the snare, and all the other drummers would copy me, and I loved it. I loved that sound of the drums.
There's definitely aspects of that show up in Yardbirds songs. I'm thinking of something like I'm a Man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very marching.
Yes. That studio recording captured the rave-up stuff you guys were doing on stage.
Yes. That was a very good lineup for us. very good recordings. I think they were all done in the States. American recording was much better than English.
You guys in Chicago, you recorded at Chess?
Chess Studio, exactly. And they knew how to do it. The engineer was great. He obviously engineered Muddy Waters and
Howlin' Wolf and Willie Dixon.
Yeah, Howlin' Wolf, B.B. King and all those guys. And so he knew how to get a good sound, a good rock and roll sound.
So going back to the beginning, you're a drummer in this cadet band. Did skiffle make an impact on you, or was that something you weren't much interested in?
No, I liked skiffle. Yeah, skiffle, I loved it. The big person in England was Lonnie Donegan, who sort of did all the skiffle stuff. I mean, he got, I don't know, he got it all from Woody Guthrie or whatever. He got it somewhere because everyone does.
Yeah, Lead Belly.
Everyone does, you know. And, well, it was unusual, the washboard and the stand-up bass and all that. And it was good. Yeah, it was good. It had a lot of life to it. And it was a little bit more exciting than sort of trad jazz, you know, with the banjo and all that. When we were forming the band, that was quite big. People like Akka Bilk and Ken Collier, you know, those trad bands, they were quite popular.
That's where The Who came from, out of that tradition.
Yeah. And I think Lonnie used to play with Chris Barber, didn't he?
Yeah.
Chris Barber was a great jazz man, you know, played the trombone and all that. I liked that very much. And then, of course, the Rolling Stones were something else.
So it seems like with skiffle, it was a very empowering thing, whether you had any kind of musical ability or not as a kid. But then you branch off from that, and the Beatles were very rock and roll, but also pop. But then you had the branching off with people like yourselves and the Rolling Stones, where you gravitated toward blues, R&B, and soul.
Yes.
Is that safe to say that that was the direction you guys decided to go in?
Yeah. We didn't have the talent of the Beatles as songwriting, but they started off with that sort of music, didn't they? Covers of early rock and roll. They didn't do so much blues, but they did rock and roll.
No, right.
I think it was just the excitement, the real emotion in the music, and, you know, the real black blues music. It was so, I mean, Jimmy Reed live at Carnegie Hall, you know, it was so sort of raw and down to earth and exciting and emotional. And it was so much better than just listening to, you know, Buddy Holly or the Everly Brothers. I mean, they were great as well, but this was better. This was like, had an edge to it.
Did you feel that it was a sort of specialized taste and not so much mainstream at that point?
Yeah, it was underground, I would say. Yes, it was underground. It wasn't listened to very much on the radio or anything like that. It was only when we got going and, you know, the Stones really, and they started to have hits, that people heard it more on the radio. Actually, I don't think it ever really got huge on British radio.
No.
Not the original.
Not the originals, no. But when the Stones did Little Red Rooster, that might be the most hardcore blues that ever was a hit in England.
Exactly. Yeah. Howlin' Wolf was fantastic. I mean, it was fantastic stuff.
So Clapton was not your first guitarist, but he was brought into the band.
Yeah, we had a guy called Top Topham.
Right.
Who was very friendly with Chris Dreyer, and they were at the Kingston Art School with Keith Ralph, and that's how we got together, basically. Paul Samuel Smith, the bass player, and myself, we were at a grammar school, like a high school, and we'd always been in different bands and school groups and things. And then we all got together, because we were all local, we were all in southwest London, and we used to hang out in the same pubs and clubs and things. And we sort of hit it off with the music. We loved it.
And sort of how did Clapton end up in the Yardbirds?
Well, he was at the art school too, and unfortunately for Top, he was a little bit younger than the rest of us. And when we started playing, it was a lot of late sessions and playing a lot, you know, playing every night of the week. It seemed to go very quickly. And his parents didn't want that. They wanted him to study art. He was a very good artist at art school. So they put pressure on him and said, you know, well, we want you to leave the... I think his father was an actual artist, and we don't want you to be in a sort of rock band with all these funny guys, you know. So he had to leave, and then that's where Clapton came in. He knew Keith and Chris from the art school, and they knew him. He had a bit of a reputation, and he was obviously very good. He came in and played, you know, he had that sort of flair. And very sort of dynamic sort of personality.
And at the point that you guys got together and started to gig regularly, get some notice, that aspect of your live act, the rave up, where you would draw out the songs and they had these big crescendos to them, was something you guys got to be known for.
Yeah, that was a lot to do with Paul Samuel Smith. I mean, he was very clever with those things. You know, he had lots of ideas. He'd got that from watching some other bass player somewhere. I never heard it, but a guy that played with Cyril Davis, who was a harmonica player, blues harmonica player. And it was just an idea. He said, well, we'll do this build up. So we all did it together. We all sort of doubled up to a big crescendo. It was all about playing exciting music and excitement and getting the crowd going, especially where we played at the Crawdaddy Club in Richmond. You know, people went mad when we played all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we were the only one that did the rave up.
It's what you guys got known for, and in fact, your first album as the Yardbirds was 5 Live Yardbirds. An actual live album was your first album.
Yes. I think the idea of that was that when we played in the studio, it never seemed to come off. You know, like I said before about the US studios, mm-hmm. It never sounded very good in an English studio playing that sort of music. Uh-huh. It all sounded very tame and very dull. So the live idea was a good one, because the live album, for all its sort of errors or whatever, sounds pretty good.
It still stands up. It's a very exciting record to listen to.
Yeah. Well, we had a lot of creative people, including our manager, you know, Giorgio Gamelski, who was pretty creative at the beginning. Mm-hmm. He was originally the promoter of the Crawdaddy Club, and we used to originally promote the Stones as well. Mm-hmm. But he didn't manage to manage them, so he lost out to Andrew Oldham on that one.
Right. So you guys put out some singles. I Wish You Would.
Good Morning Little Schoolgirl.
Yeah, Good Morning Little Schoolgirl. I Ain't Got You.
Oh, yeah. I Ain't Got You, yes. They were okay, you know, but they weren't really pop material, I don't think. They got into the charts, but pretty low down.
But did you get a sense then, guys that start out with this great live act and you're steeped in the blues because you find it really compelling and more serious, for lack of a better word, than Buddy Holly or Everly Brothers? It's not so pop. It's something meaningful to you guys.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're kind of wanting to get that commercial success and have a hit. And that's where you have the crossroads where, no pun intended, Clapton wants to stay hardcore blues. And you bring in Graham Gouldman and For Your Love. That's the line drawn.
Yeah, I could understand it. I mean, I suppose maybe there was slight desperation, you know. We have to have a hit, you know. All these other bands are having hits and us not. We're popular, we've got a good following. Mm-hmm. And I guess there was some desperation, although, of course, we all liked For Your Love. We all liked the idea that, apart from Eric. Mm-hmm. So we weren't really that, I mean, we loved the blues, but we weren't purists.
Right. And he was.
Yeah, and he was. Although he did have some other issues going on, to be fair. Some issues within the band. So bands are tricky, you know. Difficult to find young guys trying to get on. But he was always very ambitious in a way, a bit more ambitious than the rest of us. And that sort of came out. Eventually he was going to be his own guy. He didn't want to toe the line. He wasn't a team player, let's say.
The story is that he didn't want to go commercial, and you guys did, and he was such a blues guy, he didn't want to do that. But you're saying he was as ambitious as anyone, even more so. And certainly what he did after that, first Mayall, then Cream, nobody can argue that they weren't commercial, especially Cream.
Well, yeah, I know. I don't know. So I think it was more to do with his issues within the band than anything else. But it was actually a relief when he left. It was nice because there was always an atmosphere all the time with him, you know, traveling around, going around in a van, and he was always in a mood or something or other. And you lost that sort of having a laugh thing. That happened at the beginning. You all used to have a laugh, and then all of a sudden he started to be very sort of insular.
It's interesting you use that word because You guys shared a bill at the end of '64 with the Beatles doing their Christmas gigs in England.
Yeah.
And George Harrison has described that was when he first met Clapton, and that he seemed very lonely to him, like very on his own. And that's exactly what you're describing here.
Yes. He sort of made that for himself in a way, but he always sort of had a bit of a chip on his shoulder about his upbringing and about, because he was brought up by his grandparents and not his parents.
Uh-huh.
And he had a sort of mysterious upbringing as far as we were concerned. We didn't know. He didn't talk about it. So it was always like there was this strange mystery, and he was like slightly hurt about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how he finally resolved it, but he obviously worked on it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that was the reason he went through all that alcoholism and all that stuff.
Now, 64, you guys are sharing the bill with the Beatles that year. Obviously, they've taken over the world during the past year from the end of 63 into that. What kind of impact did that have on you guys in terms of your fortunes and your ambitions? Was it an influence, or was it something like, was it an anti-influence, like don't want to be like that? How did you view that at the time?
I don't know if it was either of those. It was just fun. I mean, it was nice to be able to play with them, and it was an honor, an honor to be on the bill. And it was interesting to be in that sort of company.
Mm-hmm.
Of obviously very creative guys and very funny. They were very funny and right on the ball all the time. And they were a real team. Clapton, we weren't such a team, but they were really a team. None of them were on their own. I mean, there were no loners. They were all together.
Uh-huh. The four-headed monster, as Mick called them.
Yeah, and they were all working together really well, I mean, they didn't really care when they played, because everyone was screaming, so nobody really heard anything.
Mm-hmm.
So they, particularly John Lennon, he just messed around,
Mm-hmm. You guys had played together in Paris as well, right?
Yes, we did, and that was great. That was good.
Different crowd?
Yes. It was odd, very odd, because they were all men, which was very odd, all men, and they were all singing, she loves you, yeah. All the men joining in. It seemed very strange. And no screaming or anything like that. It was a different culture.
Can you compare the French audience with what you're familiar with back in England?
Well, there's a lot of difference, because in England, you see, the audience is a 75% female. Here, 75% male. And that's the main difference, really, because they still appreciate it, but you don't get the full noise and the atmosphere of a place.
No screams. No screams and fainting. Why is it 75% boys?
I don't know, but I think they don't let the girls out at night in France.
Very, very odd, but it was fun. It was quite fun doing that, going over in the aeroplane with them and all that stuff. And, not that we talked to them very much, but now and then we did.
But they were friendly.
Yeah, very friendly, very nice. Yeah, very, very helpful.
Speaking of helpful, you're reminding me that in this pre-For Your Love period, with Clapton still in the band, although on his own, John suggesting a song for you guys to cover, a Chuck Jackson song?
Yes, he did. He did The Breaking Point, which was nice, but actually a Burt Bacharach song, which was good, but I don't know, not quite what we wanted.
It's hard to imagine you guys doing that, although it would have been interesting.
Yeah, we should have done it, and we could have said, it was his idea. Could have had a story to it, but it was Burt Bacharach for us. It's a little bit,
Yeah,
bit
too
too pop.
odd. Doing a rave up with Burt Bacharach.
Yeah, I know.
So you get the Graham Gouldman song, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. This is what I'd read somewhere, that for the For Your Love session, Brian Auger was playing the keyboards.
Yes.
And he was expecting an organ, and instead there was a harpsichord.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess that's the story. It was Paul's idea, Paul Samuel Smith, to do it with the harpsichord. He had the idea after hearing the demo by Graham. The demo had a 12-string on it, but it had the bongos the same.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an interesting session because, Brian makes that joke about it, there's no hit records ever with the harpsichord on it. And it was interesting, the bongo player, he was a guy called Denny Piercy, and he was a BBC radio presenter.
Everyone says the names in that order. Do you know why?
I don't know. Why did they say John, Paul, George, and Ringo?
John, Paul, George,
and
Denny.
Denny.
And Denny?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, gonna have top billing next week.
4+1.
Lovely.
And he sort of turned up and he said, "Oh, I'm Denny Pierce." Oh, right. Oh, yes, I've heard you on, motoring programs and all this stuff. He said, "Oh, yeah, and I play a bit of bongos." He was an amateur player, but he was really good. He really did the job. I mean, the bongos and the drums, I think, sound great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's another distinctive element alongside the harpsichord on that record that really makes it stand out from what was on the radio then.
That's right. Yeah. It sounded great, The combination of all those instruments, especially at the end, where it sort of doubled up. It was great.
So Clapton is on the bridge, that guitar there?
Yes, he's playing on it, yeah.
Uh-huh. But that was it for him.
Yes.
So he leaves the band. You guys originally wanted Jimmy Page in at that juncture.
Yes.
And he, meanwhile, is doing session work and was not in position to give that up at that point?
Yes, exactly. He was very busy. He liked the band, but he didn't want to join a group.
Not yet.
He was making plenty of money doing the sessions, and I don't think he even foresaw him joining the group. I'm not sure,
I've had Vic Flick on the show before. He's spoken of working with Jimmy, and that unlike Vic Flick, Jimmy couldn't read music. So they'd be doing these sessions together, and he'd have to kick him to tell him when to play.
Oh, okay. That's funny. Yeah, that's funny. I guess Jeff was the same. Jeff used to do sessions that Jimmy couldn't do as well. He was on that list.
Uh-huh.
Apparently, I didn't know at the time, but they knew each other since they were like 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
And of course, they were all from Clapton as well. They were all from the same area. They were all from Surrey. They all lived in Surrey, which is a county just outside London, all about 20 or 30 miles apart from each other, which is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, what's in the water?
Yes, I know.
It's like Lennon and McCartney both living in Liverpool, these two world-class songwriters that don't connect until some guy knows them both connects them.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that funny? I know. Well, that was what it was about. It was all local, local groups. That how we got together. We were all local guys, and we knew other local guys that lived in Surrey.
Mm-hmm. Didn't have internet yet.
Yes.
So then Jeff Beck joins. What was that like? Did you get a read right away that this was going to widen your boundaries, or did you not really know until it actually happened?
Oh, no, I had no idea. I mean, he played all the parts. He played what was necessary, and then he was playing more than what was necessary, and then he was developing. Well, I don't know what he was like. I never saw him play before, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know whether he played all that wild stuff before. He probably did. But he was very much into different sounds and, Les Paul and Mary Ford and all that stuff.
Oh.
Electronic music. He used to have records of electronic stuff. He wasn't a great blues fanatic.
Mm-hmm. But he's completely wide open musically.
Yeah, but he loved the blues as well. You know? And he could play, he could play the blues better than anyone else. He was amazing. I didn't expect him to be so good, to be honest. And he really took that group into that area where we're well known for. They gave the group the name, I think.
Yeah.
People remember us as a psychedelic group. Psychedelic, wild sort of blues type band.
Undefinable.
Yeah, and he was a lot to do with that. He put in all those sounds, and we all went with it. We were all happy to do that.
And that's the thing that really speaks to where your heads were at in the wake of the success of For Your Love. You could have kept doing Graham Gouldman covers for the rest of your career and stayed in that box.
Yeah.
But it's clear pretty early on, even though you've got this background in blues, you guys, your tastes and where you're willing to take the music is way beyond that. We start coming up with these sounds that are like non-rock and roll, sort of Gregorian sounding things like Still I'm Sad. Where does that come from?
I know. It was just that we all had ideas. We said, well, we're in this band. Well, let's put them in. Let's just put them in. All our different ideas, whatever, a bit of African drumming here and Gregorian chant. And some strange other music going on. let's put them all in and have fun.
It doesn't sound like a band wanting to play it safe.
No. I think when we did the album, I mean, the main album for us was the Roger the Engineer, when we hadn't really done a studio album before.
Mm-hmm.
We really had fun, and it was great to be able to have that ability to be able to do an album and have some time to ourselves and play as a group and not under pressure.
Mm-hmm. So that year, 65, he joins. The first single he plays on is Heart Full of Soul. The same year, the Beatles make Help, and George picks up sitar and end up incorporating that in by year's end with Norwegian Wood on Rubber Soul. You guys beat them to the punch with your early attempts for Heart Full of Soul to put a sitar on that, and it doesn't quite work out, does it?
No, it was funny, actually. I had no idea. I turned up at the studio and there was a sitar player sitting there on the floor, with a tabla player, the Indian guys, sitting in the sound booth. So we said, oh, fine, let's try it. I think it was Giorgio that got that together, our manager.
Uh-huh. Was it his idea to do that sort of Eastern sounding thing?
I think it was his idea. I don't know whether he'd spoken to Paul. I don't know if Paul knew about it, but we said, okay, let's have a go. And we knew the demo. We'd heard the demo with Graham, and we knew that da-da-da-da-da-da at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like, this would probably sound good on a sitar. And it did sound good. It just didn't quite make it, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It sounded a little bit too tame compared to Jeff, who just played it immediately on his fuzz box or whatever it was, his yard box, I think they called them. And that sounded great. It was there, really, really live, really sounded great.
It's an amazing thing for you guys to channel the sound of sitar on an electric guitar and put this out as a commercial single.
Yes.
Again, it's just an amazing thing that you guys were so willing to experiment and put that stuff out there in 1965.
Yes. I don't know, it was all part of the scene, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
All these things were going on. People were listening to Ravi Shankar and all this sort of weird music was becoming more popular all of a sudden, as well as the blues.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, after the blues, all these things were part of that sort of summer of love that came a bit later.
Mm-hmm.
People wanted more experimentation and more sort of Pink Floyd-y stuff,
Right.
We were a bit early for that.
Yeah. Do you think that a lot of this might have been informed by the backgrounds of art college from some of the players, like not only your own band, but The Who, where you got Pete Townsend as The Who is sort of pivoting from the maximum R&B stuff into this experimentation with feedback and their live presentation, and then starting to think conceptually in what they're putting on vinyl?
Yeah, I think so. I think we picked up from all over the place. I saw The Who play a few times early on, and it was very exciting. I don't know who played the feedback first, to be honest, Jeff or Pete, one of the two.
John Lennon would say he did.
I defy anybody to find the record unless it's some old blues record in 1922, the first pop record, where I had this electric acoustic guitar and it would feed back on the little intro, which goes is the first feedback. I claim it for the Beatles.
Oh, we probably did, yeah. I mean, it all happened around the same time or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was exciting. I mean, feedback, and Jeff could do it very well.
Oh, yeah. And you guys work it into your singles.
Well, yeah, yes, it was in the shapes of things, the feedback.
Talk a little bit about that, because that's a song you co-wrote and you recorded in Chicago. What was the genesis of that? Was that developed on the road?
Yes. We were in Chicago. Things were really happening for us. We were part of the British invasion. We were in the US. We loved it. We were very popular, and we suddenly come over to the US and became established, very popular. And we thought, we're going to go into Chess Studios. Giorgio's idea again. So we thought, we need a song. Let's have a go. I've got this idea, you've got this idea. We put it all together. We did a rehearsal. I remember we went into a rehearsal room and got the basis of the song going.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have the song finished by the time we went into Chess. It was just sort of an idea.
Mm.
We had the rhythm and the chords and the lead voice and all the solos. They were yet to come, really. So it was just an embryonic thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it all worked really well in Chess, what we had. And then Keith sort of developed the vocal He did the vocal, I think, in another studio, and I'm not sure about Jeff, whether he did that live solo or I can't remember whether he did the solo live or played somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But it all worked, it all worked. And I was very proud of it because we'd all contributed to it. We were all part of the mix, and it came off really well, and it was done at a high point in our career, and yeah, it was a very nice memory.
You guys are on fire in that period with the stuff that you guys were recording. I'm thinking of You're a Better Man Than I and Still I'm Sad. Yeah. Train Kept a Rolling.
Yeah.
All these great tracks that sound amazing even today.
Yeah, Better Man Than I was great because it was a political song, very appropriate for the time and really appropriate for any time, I would say. A great, great song, and we could do a rave up in there. And then Train Kept a Rolling, that was brought in by Jeff because he had the version done by the
Burnett Brothers?
Burnett Brothers. Thanks. Yeah, he had the version done by the Burnett Brothers. I didn't know basically before that it was just a little 12-bar boogie shuffle, the original. And the Burnett Brothers had that riff in it, and it was a great riff, Jeff loved it, and so we played that. It was great. We made it into like a real train sort of song.
Which everybody's replicated ever since.
Yeah, and it fitted us, the harmonica and the drums and everything. It suited us. It was such a great idea. But it was a cover. I mean, it was somebody else's song.
That sounded nothing like the original.
No, but we had some good covers as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of Train, 1966, you guys end up in the film Blow Up.
Yeah.
And you do essentially a rewrite of Train Kept a Rollin' as Stroll On.
Yes.
You want to talk about how that all happened?
Well, yeah. We changed our manager, and we had a guy called Simon Napier Bell took over from Giorgio. Simon was someone that Paul vaguely knew because he was connected to a TV show called Ready, Steady, Go that was all happening at that time. And Simon had lots of contacts in the film business. I think he was much more connected than Giorgio, I think, at that time. A younger guy, more dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And he came up with this idea, oh, yes, Antonioni wants you in Blow Up. So apparently Antonioni saw us somewhere, which I wasn't aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently I think he asked The Who before.
That's the story that he wanted to have a sequence of a band destroying their gear on stage.
Yeah, I'm not sure. He must have seen The Who as well.
Yeah.
And he must have liked that idea. And he must have thought, oh, well, The Who do it, maybe the why don't the Yardbirds do it?
Didn't have to ask Jeff Beck twice?
Yes, it was sort of a bit awkward, I think, for Jeff to do the same, you know. And then we went in the studio. We actually did write some songs, thinking, oh, these might be what he wants, So we went in and did some songs in the studio. I don't know what happened to them, actually. But apparently he didn't like them. He didn't like the songs. No, he wanted us to play Train Kept a Rolling. So we changed it up for the rights. Changed the lyrics.
Right. And nobody went after you guys for that?
No, apparently not. So.
Wow.
But it was a little bit odd. I wouldn't say it was our best songs. I don't know, the movie had something to it. It was quite unusual. I know Jeff didn't like it.
Well, it's a great snapshot of the times and what they call swinging London of that era, and you get to see the Yardbirds in color, which is nice.
Well, exactly. We were in the right place, rather than a silly, funny film, with Norman Wisdom in it or something, a comedy thing.
Right.
We were in an actual art film,
right,
and a proper film, which didn't do us any harm at all.
So you guys make the album that's known as Roger the Engineer, which has on it Over, Under, Sideways, Down, which was something that came together based off of Rock Around the Clock.
Yes. We used to listen to a radio when we went to shows. We used to listen to a guy called Paul Raven. And Paul Raven had a radio show round about the time we'd be travelling, I guess about 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or something. And we'd listen in the car. We had a big car by then. We didn't have the van. And we thought, oh, yeah, Rock Around the Clock, that'd be good. We should do something like this, And of course we did. So it started with just the boogie.
Yeah.
And Jeff was very keen on the idea, and he played the bass. He picked up the bass and said, I want to play bass. So he bass boogie, and I played the sort of that style of drums. And then we gradually built it up bit by bit. But it came together. I think it was nice.
It's a great lead riff.
Yeah, I think he sort of made it with that beginning.
Yeah.
He made the song.
Again, sort of Eastern sounding. It's a rock and roll foundation with that boogie thing, but you guys take it in a different direction, which is what makes it so compelling now. Yes,
it was funny when we were there, we had the song and we all sat there while he did the beginning. And out of nowhere, he played that. And we're all thinking, whoa, what's that about? How does that fit? You know, that's weird. That's really strange. But it did fit, you know, and in the end, it was great.
Amazing. You guys do Roger the Engineer at 66, and Paul Samuel Smith is getting interested in production and decides, he doesn't want to tour anymore? He wants to step outside the band?
Well, it was a question of stress. I think he didn't like it. He didn't like the idea of all the traveling, and it was very tiring. We'd be playing night after night, and he wasn't so good on the road. It happened to all of us in the end.
Yeah.
Very stressful because, you know, we were trying to earn money. That was the only way. We didn't get money from the records. You know, it was such a poor royalty, and all the money was on the road, and we were booked by agents playing all the time. So we didn't have much time off, and Paul was stressed and thought, I'd like to do something else. You know, I'd like to work on my production. And it took him a little while before he did, but he did pretty well.
And at that point where he's out, that you guys ask Jimmy Page again, and this time he says yes.
Yes, and actually he was at Paul's last gig, I think. Jimmy was actually there. We played at a university, and Keith was a bit drunk, and he started insulting the students. It was either Cambridge or Oxford. I mean, I don't know. It's written down somewhere. And Paul was very upset because he was like very, what's the word? Not upper class, sort of upper crust type, you know. And he was very upset because Keith was insulting all the students. But they probably didn't care anyway. They were all drunk as well. And Jimmy was there at the gig watching. And he loved it, you know. He thought, this is great. I mean, it's like watching a punk band, I guess, you know.
What the Beatles did in Germany is Mach Schau.
Well, that's it. And so he jumped at it then, joining us.
Was he originally asked to play bass?
Well, he initially came in on bass and played all the bass parts, as he was in Blow Up. He was playing bass in Blow Up, wasn't he? And then we just sort of, we can't let him play bass, you know. So actually Chris was very brave, you know. He swapped from rhythm guitar over to bass, and he did very well, I thought, Chris.
Sure.
Chris Dreyer.
Happenings 10 Years Time Ago is the single that you guys do with that lineup: Page, Beck, McCarty, Dreyer, and Keith. Yeah. And that was an idea that Keith and I had worked on. In fact, I just asked somebody today, somebody I know in Australia has the original demo that Keith and I did. Wow.
Which I wanted to get hold of. I'd like to hear that. And we went into the studio with that idea, and then Jeff and Jimmy did their bit on it. Actually, John Paul Jones played the bass.
Oh.
He played the bass on it. I don't know why, but he was there or whatever. And we thought, that would be good. And I thought that was another great record.
Was that recorded in London?
Yes, that was in London now. That was by the time the engineers had started improving.
Do you recall in that year, when all this amazing music is coming out from your peers, having a reaction to Revolver, which came out in August that year?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. They were all great, all those records. Yeah, they were always very good. I mean, at the beginning, you know, you haven't really heard anything like it. It was great. What was on Revolver? What song?
So you've got Taxman, you've got George's complete Indian suite, Love You Too.
Oh,
you got Tomorrow Never Knows, Eleanor Rigby.
That's right. Yeah. We would have heard that in, probably we were in America when we heard that, you know, touring, and because they played a lot of it on the radio, and of course Eleanor Rigby was a great song. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. It just seems like if you're in that game and these are your peers and every time you turn around, there's a new release raising the bar. What that must have felt like.
Well, yeah. Well, I know. It's amazing. You know, it's difficult to compete with that, but I don't know whether we were competing on one level, but
well, certainly with psychedelia, you guys are on the front lines.
Yes,
because that was so new, and you guys were on top of that very early on.
Yes,
just from your own diverse interests and sounds that you wanted to hear in a record.
Yes, it was interesting with that happening because it just really came together really nicely, a bit like Shapes of Things with everyone's contribution. I mean, it's great. You know, even Jimmy plays this, you know, he plays that great riff. They're all, you know, everyone in the band is contributing to a great record. Of course, it wasn't a big hit. It was too far out. It wasn't a big hit. People didn't play it on the radio very much, you know.
FM hadn't come into its own yet.
Not really, no. It was a bit too early.
Yeah. But this is where the attrition really starts to happen. You've already lost Paul, and now Jeff is being problematic. And what happened there?
Well,
did he jump or was he pushed?
Well, it was a combination. What happened was we were obviously very big in the States, and then we were at it playing all the time. And then somebody suggested that we play this Dick Clark tour, which was a very big tour, like 50 dates or something.
And that's a package tour with a lot of acts?
Package tour with other acts. Actually, the acts weren't really suitable for us. You know, Sam the Sham and Brian Hyland and, you know, Gary Lewis and the Playboys. I mean, not for us. And they were going places that we hadn't played, you know, down south, Atlanta and Georgia and I don't know, places we hadn't really been to very much. And it was a bit of a disaster, really.
Like Hendrix opening for the Monkees?
Yes, a bit of a disaster. But we did one date and Jeff got the hang of it immediately. He thought, oh no, this isn't what I want to do. And he was a bit messed up anyway. I mean, he was stressed out from all the touring. Mm-hmm. He'd originally been a bit ill playing down in south of France. And he thought he had meningitis, but it was just stress. And then he got hung up on this girl in Hollywood.
Mary Hughes.
Yes, Mary Hughes, exactly. And then did the one night of this tour, and he obviously saw what it was going to be like. And he just lost it. He lost his temper. He smashed up his guitar in the dressing room and then just disappeared, basically. Just went off and disappeared for the whole tour.
Wow.
And so we did the whole tour as a 4-piece. We did other shows, which sort of worked. And it was always very stressful with Jeff anyway, because he never knew what his sound was going to be like. And he'd often lose it on stage and he'd kick the amps off stage and all that sort of stuff.
Just like in Blow Up.
Yeah, and Jeff and Jimmy were very competitive with each other. So it was like hit or miss in a way. And then we did this pretty awful tour. We thought, oh no, we've done this whole tour and we haven't played any of them. So he sort of let us down in a way. You know, we were all going along with it. He let us down, so he was sort of pushed. He was pushed when we got back to London. Mm-hmm. We had a meeting and we said, well, it's no good, you let us down. And there was no coming back, I don't think. So, but I heard he walked out the room and he said, oh, you coming with me then, Jimmy? And Jimmy said, oh, no, I'm staying with the band. So, you know, so I think he was a bit surprised.
That's funny. It's interesting to me that you guys both Jeff on his own, and at that juncture, you guys both paired up with Mickey Most.
Well, yeah, that was a big mistake. I think things were drying up with the band, especially no Jeff, no Paul Samuel-Smith. You know, we didn't have that chemistry like in the early days. We had to keep on with the hits. It was still hit after hit.
Right.
And it was Jimmy actually said, oh, let's try Mickey. You know, he's the hit maker. He's the person that has all the hits. So we went to Mickey. Mickey was working with Peter Grant. Oh. Peter took over our management and Mickey was the producer, but of course he had these terrible songs. He did little games, which wasn't bad.
Yeah, it's an interesting record that you guys did. It's very diverse stylistically. It's got some blues stuff like Drinking Muddy Water, but then it's got stuff like 10 Little Indians and just stuff that you guys never should have touched.
Yeah, some of them were okay, but there's about, I think we did about 4 different singles with Mickey, and one of them is sort of all right, and the rest of them are terrible,
But you got glimpses on that album, which is terrific.
Yeah, there's little bits that are good. Yeah.
And for anybody not knowing, Mickey Most was the producer of Donovan and Herman's Hermits during that time, right?
Yes, he did Herman's Hermits and a girl singer from Detroit, Susie Quattro.
Oh, okay, right.
Susie had big hits, and Herman, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so at that point, you guys are still playing as a 4-piece. You never thought to replace Jeff because apparently you thought it was working okay?
Well, it did work. It worked well.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it worked well on the road.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good lineup. We didn't have any aggravation. Jimmy was fine. He was always the same, He was very professional.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked well together.
It's interesting at this point, as you're now on the final slope of Yardbirds, seeing all the pieces for Led Zeppelin coming into place. First, you got Peter Grant. You listen to the Little Games album, and you've got White Summer, which would be resurrected by Zeppelin. You've got the song Think About It, which is a nice track.
Yes.
But the lead solo he does in there, he would replicate later on for Dazed and Confused.
Yes.
So he's sort of putting all these ideas in his pocket to repurpose down the road.
John Paul Jones played on that album as well. Not bass, not necessarily bass, but he played odd things. He was around, I remember.
Mm-hmm.
He was part of that album. Yeah, and suddenly, I don't think Jimmy ever predicted Zeppelin. I don't think it was in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think he just wanted to carry on with us.
Right. The new Yardbirds sprung out of dates I guess you guys had booked for that you weren't going to show up for, and so he wanted to fulfill them.
Yeah, lots of people say to me, oh, Jimmy had that idea for Led Zeppelin, and it was his idea, and he wanted to do it for years, and he wanted to get rid of you and all that. But no, that wasn't the case. I think it just happened for him. It was just in his lap.
Right. He was the last man standing.
Yeah, it just fell in his lap with Peter Grant and a repertoire. Mm-hmm. It was our repertoire, and they went from there, and they developed it. They were a good band.
Now, it's 1967 when all this is happening. It's the year of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper, which basically redraws the map for rock acts at that time. You've got The Who doing The Who Sell Out that year, having done a quick one at the end of 66. You guys are saddled with Mickey Most, who is all about the hit single, not about album-length conceptual pieces. Yeah. So did you feel like you were kind of like stuck and not being able to do what you wanted to do at that juncture?
Well, yeah, it was frustrating, because the album was suddenly becoming the thing rather than the single. Right. And we never really sold a lot of albums. We were never an album group, but we should have done. We could have made a great album.
And maybe if it hadn't been Mickey Most, who's all about the hit single at that point, you might have had that opportunity to stretch out in the studio like you did with Roger the Engineer, which is a great start to finish listening experience.
Well, yeah. We could have done another one of those, I guess, but we didn't have the same chemistry.
Mm-hmm. But you and Keith always worked well together, and that, of course, is what ends up happening after the Yardbirds call it a day.
Yeah, that's right. We wrote songs together, and we wanted to do something different.
And in fact, you called it Together initially.
Yes, it was called Together. And then we finally decided to form the band, which was a good idea, rather than just being, recording duo or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and forming the band, it got more interesting as well. Right. It became like a prog band.
Absolutely. Yeah, with Renaissance. And you bring in Keith's sister Jane, because you wanted female vocals on that.
Yes.
It's a very interesting situation where you guys put out that album, and I guess at some point after that, you decide you don't want to be playing live, but behind the scenes writing and producing, and the band sort of takes on a life of its own after that.
I know. I mean, I think we got stuck in the same thing again. We were into touring and all that stuff again, and sort of a bit out of our control, really. I mean, we just wanted to go in the studio and play stuff, but that wasn't practical.
Right. You spoke a little bit to it in the Yardbirds. The classic lineup for you was pre-Jimmy coming in. It was Jeff Beck after Clapton, that 5-man lineup, Paul. Yeah, that was where the chemistry worked, and whatever Jeff's tantrums were, he didn't really have tantrums unless he was stressed.
It was usually on the road, playing live. So recording-wise, it worked really well.
So overall, in the arc of your career, including everything you've done since then, other acts that you've put together and recorded with, what do you see as some of your favorite events, favorite albums or musical moments?
Well, I think the Roger the Engineer was one. Happening 10 years time ago was another from us. And then the first Renaissance album worked very well. And that was because Paul Samuel-Smith came back again, as producer. And that worked really well. And then some of the stuff I've done solo has worked very well, but it's difficult people to get interested. Oh, the drummer's singing songs,
It happens. It happens.
It's sort of a typecast thing, isn't it? But I liked it when we had Illusion and Keith died. I could sing with Jane, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the singer-songwriter role, actually, as well, as well as drumming. Some of that Illusion stuff's coming out again soon. It's a box set.
Oh, great.
And it sounds really good. I mean, it's great. What a great band. I'm singing, I'm not drumming on it very much. It's all very nicely done.
Wow, that's excellent. So, do you still stay in touch with any of your former bandmates, going back to Clapton?
Not so much Clapton or Jeff, actually. Mainly Jimmy Page.
Who did the foreword to your book, Nobody Told Me?
Yeah, that's right. Jimmy, Paul Samuel-Smith, we went to school together and were still very friendly. Chris Dreyer, not so much, because he seems that he suffers a lot of bad health.
Yeah.
He's had some strokes and stuff, so he's not very well. And that's about it.
And Box of Frogs was the other project you did that was sort of post Yardbirds that you guys did a record on as well that we had talked about.
Yes, that was fun too.
Right.
That was involving Jeff and Paul Samuel-Smith, Paul actually playing rather than producing.
All was forgiven.
Yeah. He played the bass. So it was good.
We talked a little bit about your memoir and She Walks in Beauty. And again, anybody interested in the story of your life as seen through the eyes of somebody coming up in England during this very exciting time and was a part of it and a contributor to it, you're definitely wanting to check out Nobody Told Me. And She Walks in Beauty, just phenomenal depiction of connecting with loved ones beyond this dimension.
Right. Yeah. It's something I've always been interested in, it's part of me, really. It was there in the band. It was always there, bubbling under.
Sure. Yeah, and I think the music reflects that in places, and certainly your work with Keith.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, particularly happening.
So get in touch with him.
Perhaps we can write another song together.
Something About the Beatles. Created and hosted by Robert Rodriguez. Sponsored by BetterHelp. Go to betterhelp.com/satbeat for 10% off your first month. Executive producer Rick Way. Title song by the Corgis.